Welcome to In the Green Room. I'm Kinga.
And I'm Chet, and we have some very fun guests back in the studio today.
Who do we have, Chet?
Mike and Dylan Watkiss, welcome back.
Thank you for having us.
Well, and this is sort of unusual for us because we never get invited back. We rarely get invited the first time. Second time doesn't happen for us.
It's truly an honor.
This is a great honor for us.
We had so much fun talking to y'all last time. Even though we were talking about some darker subjects that you've covered, it was still a lot of fun.
Yeah,
But you have to remember,
about
it's
a year
a
ago.
dark subject, but yet he's the hero. Because
Well,
he's taking bad guys and he's helping get them behind
I
bars.
don't know,
glad
he's a
my kid-
hero.
I'm
That's a
glad my
high
kid
kids
praise.
Well, if
That's a
people
hero.
don't know about the evils going on, they're never going to get stopped. So there's
It's
truth
true.
to that.
That's
So.
right.
And that has been the power to the extent the media has the power to really shine the light.
Mike
And
Watkiss,
that's
tell us who you are.
Uh,
Or do you want to talk about
Yeah,
your
who are you?
A man that needs no introduction, but
Yeah.
still we want a little overview for anybody
Yeah.
that didn't hear
Well,
the first episode.
I guess I'll introduce you.
Yes.
But he
Uh-huh.
was a journalist for 40 plus years. Started at a current affair and traveled.
Big deal.
Well, started before that, but that was your big break. And then
Yeah.
came here and worked at 3TV for my whole life and covered all of the crime under the sun.
So when he was with Current Affair, what were some of the biggest cases that he handled?
Wasn't that OJ and Tonya Hart? No, Tonya was.
OJ.
Tonya Harding, oh my
He
gosh.
did cover her,
OJ.
but that was under a different
No, no.
tabloid.
No, that was
Was that
Tanya.
correct?
Tanya spent 3 months in the Marriott Hotel in Portland, Oregon. Should have been arrested. Threatened to beat up a news anchor while I was up there.
Nice.
Tanya threw a punch at my cameraman. We should have gone to jail.
So let's remind people, in case they don't know who that is, she was the one that tried to hurt Nancy Kerrigan.
The famous figure skater,
The gorgeous-
battling figure skater. She sent her goofy thugs to go whack Nancy Kerrigan.
So she could win.
Yeah.
So she could put Nancy out of the competition. It was a real bad idea.
It didn't work either.
Put together by real fools.
Sounds like a movie plot. You'd be like, I can't even believe this.
Well, but this is-
True,
they
like,
made a
honest
movie.
thing.
They made that movie with I,
Couple of-
Tonya.
I, Tonya, a couple of years ago.
With Margot Robbie.
With Margot Robbie, and it was all about the Tonya Harding thing. And the guy who wrote the movie called
you
me.
screwed up.
I screwed up. Called me about 2 years before I, Tonya hit and wanted some information. And I spoke to him for about a half hour, and he said I had just produced a movie. Well, it turns out he produced I, Tonya, and I sort of blew him off after this initial conversation. But I, Tonya was a beautifully put together movie and really showed the insanity of that media moment in Portland. I argue it was when the 3 major networks threw in all the towels. They were also sort of repulsed by the tabloid wave that a current affair represented. They wanted nothing to do with us. But on the Nancy and Tanya story, they completely just threw everything out and said, we're all in. So I was throwing elbows with network bigwigs and all of the tabloid bad boys, and it was the time when American media just threw all in and said, a tabloid story like that we cannot avoid.
Well,
But
I have to say,
anyhow,
I love that show. I used to love that show. It would hook me in. I'd be all about it.
The Flying Triangle and Maury Povich. Yeah, it was definitely a
And
moment.
then OJ Simpson, didn't you cover that case?
Was there the morning they found the bodies of Ron and Nicole. One of the first TV crews to roll up to the scene when
Saw
Ron
the
and
blood.
Nicole were still, in that horrible
Wow.
crime scene. And OJ had gotten on an airplane that night and gone off to Chicago, but he promptly came back, and thus started the trial of last century.
So did you ever get to meet him, or?
Saw OJ that day, the very day I was in the parking lot barking questions.
There's a
at the
picture
Jews.
on the newspaper, and it's OJ, and you're right behind him.
Right behind Don and the Jews.
Iconic.
Right there.
It was the day.
On his ass.
It was within hours of them finding the bodies, and they finally got OJ down to Parker Center, the famous L.A. police headquarters, and a bunch of us reporters were just waiting.
Did he do it?
That's exactly what we
Did
were
the
doing.
glove fit?
Did the glove? Well,
Stretched his hand a little bit,
This was
but-
before Johnny Cochran got involved, but yeah, we were there. We were there from the opening bell with OJ Simpson. So I was blessed. My career, I feel like I have been just afforded a front row seat to history.
It's incredible.
Yeah, and I just just serendipitous and being stupid and lucky. Being.
But hard work creates those lucky opportunities.
Yeah, people always say that. Maybe
it's a chain
that's,
reaction.
But that's the case. But honestly, some of the times I was just in the right place.
What about Jeffrey Dahmer? Did you have anything to do with
Never had, other than reading. The main serial killers that I have dealt with are Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker.
Oh my gosh,
One
so
of the
scary.
very sat across the table.
He's one of 2 people to ever interview him.
In a room closed.
You interviewed him?
He and
Shook
I
his
were
hand.
sitting like this. It's on the
Ew.
YouTube. My interview with Richard.
How many people did that guy kill?
He ended up being convicted of 14 murders. He died of natural causes.
But he killed more people.
And
There
Netflix did a documentary on him. I think it's
Just-
called The Night Stalker.
That's
right?
Yeah,
exactly
actually-
what it is.
You know how they have like little quotes from Richard? The part where he's like, "We're all evil." That's a direct quote from the interview he did with him.
Wow.
I don't know where the
fascinating.
interview is, but if you
So-
listen to the opening moment of that documentary,
Or, I don't
on
think it's the
Netflix,
opening moment, but it's
it is
in
the
there.
first thing
Is
he
it?
says. We're all evil, and that was a line.
That's so scary.
That's what I said.
But you know what? You're a
It's
hero.
like bone-chilling
Once
line.
again,
Yeah.
I'm going to say we're here saving the planet.
One show at a time.
And you're saving the people from these criminals. You are. You're
Yeah.
saving the people from the
Oh, you
criminals.
know what?
And you're
I've had
saving
a
the
lot of
children.
fun
You're
doing
saving
what I
children
You did say
because of what you've done with
Good.
the
Well, that's
with the
nice.
Jeffries thing.
If we did anything to help,
Jeffs.
if we did anything to help anybody along the way, that is reward enough.
So one of your biggest things here in Arizona is Warren Jeffs.
Yeah.
Big deal. You've been saving children. Tell us about that.
Well, that was what you covered. I mean, most of your career here in Arizona. I remember that was probably one of the first stories I remember you covering. But yeah, I mean, you got on that early, and you don't like to take credit for it, and you should take more credit. I'm not saying take all the credit because it was definitely the women that did most of the work, but you held the microphone for them to tell their stories on a big platform.
Yeah.
But yeah, he would go up there and help girls escape at night, and
He
did. Yeah.
We did. Well, we got. She and I sort of got sucked back into this story just about 3 weeks ago. I've been retired for 4 years. This Netflix thing came out, and a lot of people wanted to talk about that and whatever. And then
Keep Sweet.
Yeah,
Yes.
Keep
The
Sweet. Keep
documentary.
Sweet, Pray and Obey. And if people haven't seen that, you want sort of FLDS Warren Jeffs 101. That is it's very
American history. You should
So-
know about it.
It is American history.
How did he bamboozle everybody to listen to him and follow him?
Well, you
I mean,
gotta
seriously.
you gotta understand, and you gotta understand that he is not Charlie Manson. He's not David Koresh. He did not go out and self-generate a cult because of his charisma. He inherited a long, well-defined mantle of power through this prophecy, through the, it started with the LDS Church, Mormon
Right,
Church.
exactly.
Mormon LDS founder Joseph Smith, founded this many years ago.
A
100
slightly older cult.
Yeah, well, and I'm not going to lie to you. And I was raised in, and I don't want to go back. Honestly, it's not my desire.
Well,
to
one of our
bag
biggest
on-
sponsors here, Jerry, I'm not saying his last name, he is Mormon.
Yeah, and
And we discussed what we're going to talk about on the show, and he said, "Well, that's like a different sector
Yeah,
of
And
the
it
church."
is. It's the fundamentalist,
and they practice what they practice is very different from the mainstream.
Yes.
Mormon
But
church.
Jerry never goes to church and he drinks, so I don't think
Well,
he's really Mormon.
yeah.
not a true Mormon.
All right, well,
But, yeah.
my kind of Mormon. But anyhow,
Well, there's
yeah, but-
basically extremists of every religion
Oh,
that
this is-
are,
yeah.
have
Yes.
some evil to
and
them.
this is
so.
Yes.
and the thing that before we can talk about Jeff, but the thing about this is I think Mormons are sort of easy. There's almost a novelty because there's such a new religion.
Yeah.
And my argument is I've covered cult leaders from every stripe. I've covered perverted religious leaders from rabbis to Catholic priests, Lord knows, to evangelical pastors, to Mormons who are, using their power to abuse children and do bad
And
things.
that's
And I've seen that in
okay.
every damn
That's
religion.
got to stop.
And I've covered, it's got to stop, and you got to keep
And you're
raising
doing it,
hell
so he's
well.
saving children, and this is why
Yeah,
we're here saving the planet.
but
One
I don't
show at a time.
There we go, and it's good. And so if we save somebody with this, but I think all religions can be used to do really horrible things, and I've seen them all. And I don't want to. My focus was because my wife and I grew up in Utah and were raised Mormon.
Oh, you were?
Oh, yeah.
My
And
mom
so-
went to BYU for a year.
Really?
Yeah, on a dance scholarship.
Yeah.
Yeah, she
Seriously?
was raised. All my family's Mormon. Yeah, we
Are
had
you
And
Mormon?
we said,
Oh,
they're still
God,
Mormon,
no.
so we don't have any
I'm
axe to
not
grind.
religious.
My focus has been crimes. I tell people I'm not a religion reporter. I'm a cops and robbers reporter. I
love
cover
that.
crimes, and the fact is, I knew that this group, the way they were constituted and the way they performed these large kind of communities, they committed all kinds of abuses against women and children, and it led to all kinds of other crimes. And we report on the crimes and the guys who committed those crimes, raping children. We put someone.
How
in
did you
prison.
get started with this? I mean,
Because
what
I knew it was
fascinated
there.
you?
Because
It's a small community on the border of Arizona and
Mhm.
Utah, and not a lot of people even know it's there. Like
Have
people
info.
really, I would talk about polygamy, and they'd be like, "What's that?" And I'd be like, "Well, Warren Jeffs," and they'd be like, "Who's that?" And it's like, okay, yeah, and like not a lot of people know about this small community, and it was so tightly like self-run that like they didn't
And
really outsource.
secrecy.
It was like
See-
flying under the radar.
Yes.
Well, and that
Yes.
they knew that, and that they went there for that reason.
Yeah.
It's a remote area, hard to get to. Secrecy was always their ally. You know, the outside world was a big bad place, so all of us stay close together and never venture out.
Law
You know,
enforcement
and
with
this is-
followers.
This
yeah.
is
Really?
yeah.
Wow.
All the cops in town, anybody who held any sort of office had to be anointed. Nope, you didn't get there unless the prophet said so.
Mhm.
So it's one man rule. It got crazier and crazier with each successive prophet. Because they there's been events in history. Back in 1953, an Arizona governor raided Colorado City or Hilldale and Short Creek. It was a political disaster, much like what happened in Texas when they went down and got the kids off of there, and Oprah Winfrey went down, and everybody said how horrible it was, and they reunited the kids. You know, they should have raided them both times, but the PR and the optics were horrible, and it made everybody feel sorry for them and back off and leave them alone. And they sort of flew knew that they were Teflon. And I'm going through a lot of the details quickly.
Well,
but
do you think that it was overlooked because the cops that would come around? Did they want to take part in it?
no,
They
Or were they trying to
I
rape
mean,
the children too?
the
Well,
cops.
some of them were like Rodney Holm was one of the first people to get convicted, and he had he got a third wife named Ruth Stubbs, and she was one of the first women to ever come out
yeah,
and be
this
like,
is a bit. Yeah,
this is kind of like the backstory of
big
it.
hit, but big part of history. The cops within Colorado City were the Colorado City Town Marshals, and they were the most corrupt bunch of SOBs. And I've been belly bumping and chest bumping with those morons for 20 years. We finally got a federal lawsuit in Phoenix that took away all their power. There's been it's due to the dogged determination of some really brave women who stepped out. And
Who were these women?
Ruth Stubbs, Flora Jessup, Alyssa
Penny
Wall,
Peterson,
Penny Peterson, Rebecca Wall.
Yeah,
Uh,
I could name it.
Ruby-
There should be a Mount Rushmore.
Yeah,
'cause
there's
it
so
really
many
is-
women to name in
This
this.
story, people want to give me credit or somebody else credit, I defer and say the men who were involved in this story and made any difference were merely doing our jobs and getting paid for it. You want the real heroes. It is like about 2 or 3 generations of brave women who got out and realized how screwed up this was for women and children, and started raising hell. And they didn't want to prosecute. They just wanted to get their little sisters and their children out
So
of it.
where did they go? Where did they go for help?
For a lot of years, they came down to a couple of a woman like Flora Jessup, who was one of the original Hellraisers and one of my good friends, and then I put them on TV.
A future show, we got to get her on.
Yeah, she's a wonderful person.
If she's able to talk
There's
about
a
it.
handful of there's a handful of women. People want to. Showtime has a documentary now that wants to pats a couple of guys on the back for basically bringing this down. It's such bullshit. The heroes.
It was the women.
The women, and this is the thing, the Netflix, I didn't want to really get involved in another one of these documentaries. They all come to me when they want to do these things. So, and I'd sort of deferred on most of them, but the Netflix people convinced me that they were going to tell what I saw to be the real story. So the women, and I can name, there's 12 of them, roughly, that that brought, this Ruth Stubbs, who brought ended up getting her cop husband thrown.
Yeah, one of the cops in the town, they had
Alyssa-
kids together, and she was 16.
Alyssa Wall, the
Oh
woman.
yeah, I saw her. Yes.
Yeah.
Alyssa Wall.
She looks like she's 14 in the video.
Oh,
Yeah,
she's
she's
just
so
so
young.
young.
But
She's
he
such
was
a
a certified police officer, and Warren gave her to him to marry off at 15, and then she was
16,
pregnant by
yes.
16.
She escaped at 19 with 2 kids and pregnant with her third, and it was in a pivotal case because those of us who were looking for the right case suddenly had this little girl. She's 19. She's got 3 kids. She's got 2 kids and pregnant with a third, and she had been put into given as a third wife to a cop
Certified
by
police
Warren
officer.
Jeffs. It was the perfect case. We
Yep.
got him prosecuted and thrown in jail. It led to then
From that is how
It
you
was
got
the
it.
dog-
Oh yeah,
domino
and
effect.
then that led to, they realized they could get a prosecution, and Warren had his fingerprints all over this. So getting this cop thrown in jail led to then they found Alyssa Wall, who you see in that wonderful young woman who's just a terrific spokesperson now for the really wonderful lady. And anyhow, she stepped forward, and she had been placed into a marriage by Warren Jeffs with her cousin. And
At 14, right?
yeah, 14. He was 19. She hated the guy, and,
Yeah.
and he raped her. And then, anyhow, it was again. So they prosecuted Warren in St. George, Utah.
Did Warren Jeffs get paid each time he did this?
No, he
No, I mean,
paid.
he paid. They all gave their life savings
They
and any
turned over.
job
They
that
turned
money
over
they
all
made.
their money to this
All the
guy.
money went to the church.
This guy-
Everyone.
So yes, so he
involved.
got paid.
Oh yeah, I mean this guy owned everything in the town. He could kick
It's
you
not
out of
like
your
he did-
house. He could take your cars. He could take your kids. He could
And
take
this is
anything
one of the
you
great
wanted.
extortion tool. He controlled
Yeah.
all the land. So if
So
you
he's
ever
everywhere,
injected,
like
you
a mini
could just,
Hitler.
Well,
Yeah.
he didn't create the cult himself, but he was still basically leading it.
Oh, he
inherited,
told him,
yeah.
and he inherited the power from his
From his
father,
dad.
who was the prophet, and he was a perverted old man.
Yeah.
And then I can see you want to jump in
Well,
here.
Yeah,
I
okay,
just
yeah,
wanted to
ask
ask,
the question,
all
David.
these
Hi,
little
David.
minutia details. Like I'm sure we could see in the documentary and all that, but that's what I wanted to kind of poke at.
Yeah,
was
we're
like,
bouncing all over.
What's
in this
what's like the structure of power there? How did he get seated into that, and how did he kind of manifest that?
Good question.
Because he's a Machiavellian little shit who's insinuated himself at his father's shoulder. The whole thing. Again, Joseph Smith founded this religion, and as soon as he died or was martyred, as they was basically run out of town
He was
and
murdered.
lynched by a crowd, it started to fragment. His first wife and his son wanted it to be a bloodline. Brigham Young said, no, we're going to take it to Utah. And it's been splintering off in groups
But
ever
it's kind of
since.
funny because aren't prophets supposed to be anointed by God and not by man?
Well, and this is something that Warren has to explain to his own
Nepotism.
followers who will never listen to this.
Oh no,
But-
it's fake news.
But
to them.
when I went to Sunday school many years ago in the LDS faith, it was taught that the prophecy was ordained of God. When the prophet dies of the mainstream Mormon church, there is some sort of moment where God speaks and
He comes down
reveals
and picks you.
reveals the next prophet, and that's the way they believe it is. That's the fundamentalists believe the same thing, but now there is a real sort of
They never thought Rulon was going to die, and then Rulon died, and they were all like,
But the Jeffs
What
seem
the
to have now
hell?
made it a bloodline thing, and that's something for the theological, people who take that stuff seriously to argue about. But the
they're
bottom
going to do
line,
some explaining.
Well, I know that the Mormon religion is very, I don't want to offend anybody, but a little bit culty.
your words, not mine. But
The FLDS.
See, and the thing
Because
is,
hold on, I dated a Mormon. Actually,
I dated many of them.
I only dated one.
You married one.
Go
Sean
ahead.
Cooney, and the whole entire relationship, his mom was always trying to get me to convert,
Yeah.
and she would drive every Sunday to pick me up. She'd drive like 25 minutes to pick me up to make me go to church, and with my
Wow,
boyfriend.
that is if that ain't
That is
if that ain't a red flag, I don't know what is.
That's a few red flags.
That's a lot, yeah.
But she's one example. I mean, because I grew up in Salt Lake, but most of the people I went to high school with.
But they usually date within their religion.
But I
and if
really
they
like
don't,
her.
they just try to
Who
convert
doesn't?
you.
But God bless her, I really
like
mother
her.
I
wants
still
her
like her.
Jewish son to marry
I
every
know, but it
Catholic
does seem
one.
to see like they really kind of keep it within the faith.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
and there's no doubt about
But
it.
she's a great person, and I really enjoyed her except for the fact that she really wanted me to always go to church.
I mean, no, that is a universal thing across many religions.
But
though.
Yeah,
It is-
yeah, definitely.
I almost get a little sick. I'm not an LDS, but people is think that like they're weirder than other churches,
And they're
I
just
would say,
not.
hold off for just.
I think
I
it's
agree
so
with
funny.
you. They're very weird.
Have you met
But
a
they
Scientologist?
ain't any
Like,
weirder than
Well,
all of you
I think
rest
it's
of you
so funny.
folks,
I'll have
but
Well, like, for
friends-
example, I've always been Catholic, but I've never like tried to like
which I
convert
think is
anybody.
totally weird.
I know, I know.
And I've
It's-
covered as many, and I have covered as many pedophile priests as I know. I'm telling, I'm not. This is no joke. You know, I watched as they had to dismantle the Catholic Church here in Phoenix because they just it was so. You know, when I first came here, it was in turmoil.
It was rampant.
Rampant, and you had Tommy, whatever his name, and the Cardinals boys. You know, this was a dumping ground for a lot of pedophile priests. So again,
That's what I think is
it
funny.
always it strikes me a little odd when people of a certain religion.
But now
like
I'm Christian.
the Mormons.
Now-
which
Now
has
I'm
its own
Christian.
bloody, which has its own complete bloody history.
I think it's funny when my friends are like, "Oh, you're Mormon, or
That's
you have
like
Mormon
weirder
family." They're
than
like,
other
"Oh, that's so
churches."
interesting," and I'm like, "Are you religious?" They'll be like, "Yeah, I'm Catholic." And I'm like, "So what's your?" They're like, "Oh, you like the pedophiles of the Mormons." I'm like, "I'm sorry, but have you missed all
that-
of the
You miss those
pedophilia
centuries of.
in the Catholic Church? Like,
Yeah.
we just gonna look the other way and then think it's weird when Mormons
But
do
whatever.
it?"
But well, we will concede it is sort of an interesting.
It is.
It is sort of an interesting religion.
So back to
It
Warren
is.
Jeffs.
Yeah.
Let's.
And
how,
he is different. This FLDS
Is
is
so
different
different from the Mormons.
but how do we
We're
get
not
him
equating
incarcerated?
that.
How do we actually get him in there?
And what is your review on the Netflix documentary with it? Do you think they did a good job covering it?
I think they did a wonderful job.
Yeah, we
You were
actually
saying the
covered that.
Showtime one.
20 minutes
not
left or
so-
20 minutes into
Yeah,
it?
whatever. You know
in.
what? I don't want to be. But it was an example of some people who were desperate to take credit for this thing, and they're both sort of a couple
Like
of
that.
phonies. Yeah, let's just
We're
leave
not
it at
gonna
that.
throw
but
shade. No.
yeah, whatever. They don't deserve the attention.
Well, we shouldn't have been in the Netflix doc, but
Yeah, whatever. Okay, so the bottom line is Netflix, I think, did a very good job. And my ambivalence when they first came to me, I said, you know what? There's not a John Wayne in this story. There's not a Superman who, and I've seen a couple of movies made where they have some male protagonist, as it's like the guy knight in shining armor who comes and fixes. That is a complete.
Well, that was you.
No, that's a bullshit narrative.
no.
I did what I did, but you know what?
You helped crack this
Okay,
case.
all right.
You helped crack this
Okay,
case.
good. And thank
You
you.
helped crack the case.
But if that's all you hear, you miss the beauty of this story.
It was
This
the women
story
that fought.
is a handful of women who got out of this goddamn nightmare and said, "We're not going to take it anymore, and we're sure as hell not going to let our
What
little."
did Rebecca say to you? I think it perfectly describes what it was when Rebecca told you that one day that she looked down at like outside of the window. I think you should say that.
Yeah, I know. Rebecca Wall, who's in the documentary, one of my real heroes. She said she was married to Warren, and she was
married to
wearing
Rulon.
Rulon, and then when
he
Rulon died, Warren basically just took all his mothers, his
And married them
father's
all.
wives, and married them all.
Yeah, because he's weird. But
And so anyhow,
How many wives did he have? 77 or something?
some ridiculous amount, yes.
Se-
Like
77?
77 and like 20 of them were underage.
24, I think.
24.
At the time that when
Sicko.
they raided the Texas compound and collected all those records, I think they had nearly 100 wives, and about 24 of them were underage girls. He's incarcerated because he raped a 12-year-old girl in a ceremonial bed in a big fancy temple on that compound down in Texas, in front of a
Other
bunch of his other wives watching, and then the narcissistic son of a bitch tape recorded himself doing it. That I was in the courtroom when they played his rape tape in front of these jurors, and I've always said
It's
it was
despicable.
a damn good thing there were a bunch of big husky
I'm
Texas
actually gonna throw up
Rangers
right
in
now.
That's gross.
and because everybody in that courtroom was so pissed off, including the jurors, they would have killed Warren with their bare hands if there hadn't been the big tough.
I don't. Why
Texas
is he not
Rangers.
getting?
He recorded everything he did. If he went and got a pancake, there was one time that he like got a pancake in the middle of the night and he had them record that.
He had it,
Like he
yeah,
thought he was that
he
self-righteous
was-
that
there's
every
funny
single move
stories.
he made.
They're funny stories. He had scribes following him all the time, and one time we were reading all these documents that had been released, and my cameraman just busts a gut in the corner because he's reading this thing. And apparently, one of the scribes, he wanted such minute detail of his movements. Warren went to the kitchen and had a pancake. You know, it's like
Like, how
this is-
narcissistic do you have to
But
be?
you know, anyhow, that's just a funny little aside because he's a lunatic. But he recorded himself raping this kid. They found that tape, and that's why he's in prison. And so you want to know why it is. And the problem is, we helped put Warren in jail some years ago, and his community.
But why is he still alive? Why have they not given him like a death sentence?
Well,
Because,
I'm not. That's worse than murder.
Just should have let the jury beat the shit out of him.
They should
they-
have let him.
Yeah, I
That's
don't
above
see
the
it.
scope
That's
of the
beyond,
show.
that's
But now
beyond my
he's-
scope.
You don't like to take credit for being a hero, but it still takes persistent journalists shedding light on those stories. But it seems like there's been a lot of speculation that the Maxwell Epstein case has kind of been getting swept under the rug.
Oh, dude,
How do you feel about that?
I wish I knew more.
You need to go
about
find
it.
out
Yeah,
more
I don't
about
know. Yeah,
But-
I don't know.
but
Nothing
we need to
about
have
it.
you get
I
on
forget
that.
what case or what
Seriously.
news story it was, but there was some like really frivolous. I think it was like a sports story that was like taking the forefront in the newspapers above when Ghislaine's trial was, and everybody's
Yeah.
like, "How is this story not on everybody's mind?" They were trying to uncover.
I
it.
have the same questions you do.
Yeah.
Dude.
I
just
mean,
from
the
looking-
ties that
just
Epstein
reading the
had, though, like, it's ridiculous. You
Well,
know?
yeah, it seems like it would take so many elites down that they're somehow protecting the whole thing or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Just,
Let's get you on that.
Yeah, come out of retirement just for
Yeah.
that.
being
Yeah.
retired. actually. Yeah, that's that. I share many of your questions on that. I don't.
Okay, please.
Yeah, it's
I
kinda-
beg you to get involved in that.
A lot of it's speculative, but it's also weird that the judge like didn't release the names. There's a bunch of like weird red flags about that case that people are like,
It's also
how are
weird
people
that
not still
Epstein
digging at it?
Epstein ended up dead, but, you know, that's also an interesting kind of like.
people hanging themselves in prison. I know it happens.
But, like, wouldn't he be on suicide watch?
Sometimes there's somebody there helping them.
To do it with inconsistent bruising about hanging yourself is impressive
But
too.
also, wouldn't you be on suicide
whatever.
watch if you're that much of a criminal?
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm not the cops, I guess. It's not up to me.
yeah.
Well,
yeah, a lot of people felt like there was just we didn't get to the bottom of that.
Well, I don't think.
I don't think
that,
we still have,
I
yeah.
don't think that-
What is even happening there? Like, she's in prison and what? That's all I've heard.
no, Chet's right. You don't hear about it anymore. We need you to uncover that. Because, no, seriously, you cracked. Okay, David.
Last
Yes.
I heard about it, she got moved to a
A
more
little bit
like.
louder for Facebook.
Oh yeah, she got. Well, that's gonna be coming in audio, but she got a little bit more. She got moved to a nicer prison, more of just like the ones where you're playing tennis all day kind of thing.
Of course.
And then
Oh my god!
She
So
wasn't
it's
suicide
not
watch
even
for
like
a
a
little
prison.
bit.
Those are like almost like resorts.
yeah, it's like a rehab center more than anything, but yeah.
Federal country club is what it's called.
Well, we're going to have you on that because this is such a big deal that right here in Arizona, you've cracked this case and you've helped take this guy down. And all
And
these,
I'm out of gas.
but
I'm
now,
not gonna lie
but is
about
it
it.
true that he's in prison and then he's still directing people?
Oh, he
Is
just
that-
came
yeah,
out
how's
with
that
some
happening?
new revelation. I mean,
Tell
he
us
still
about
has
that.
followers that come and visit him and, you know, will, like, kiss his ass in prison. Like, they'll come see him all the time. He puts out, I mean, he's still the prophet, even though he's
No,
in prison.
he's for his faithful. He is more prophet than ever because now he's a martyr to the cause, and he was wrongly accused, and all of this.
and the rape tape
recording
was
made up,
fake, and
you know, and people.
How delusional do people have to be? That's insane.
Well, I think that's a profound question for
For the
America
entire
today,
country.
to be honest with you. But no, he still is. The Netflix documentary gives you sort of a very good history.
Yes, it's a 4-hour documentary.
Yeah,
And it'll get you up to, and it sort of leaves it there that Warren's in prison. Well, you know, immediately after that, I did a number of interviews. And
well, that's all there was for a while.
Yeah, and it was, that was sort of, that was it. The statement of history had been made, and I was glad that I shared, that was my history, and I wanted it in the rearview mirror. I don't want that in my life anymore. About 3 weeks, about 2 months after that thing dropped, I got a call from Ruth Stubbs, the woman who was the young woman who got out and helped bust the cop. She's now
The cop was her husband.
Yes.
Yeah, she's in the documentary.
I know she's blonde and she's so gorgeous and she looks like she's 12 in the video.
All right.
Yeah,
Well, Ruth
yeah.
is now has
She's
her own
now
family. Yeah, she has
up
her own
there.
family and has a husband and doing very well with her own family. But Ruth calls me about 2 months after the doc drop, and I'm thinking this thing's in my history, and says, "So this is one of the young girls that really was pivotal in the history of bringing down Warren Gardner." She calls me and says, "I have friends whose daughter has been kidnapped, and we think she's been pulled back into the FLDS church, and they're going to marry her, and she's 70.
Well, you're missing the revelations.
Well, earlier this summer, Warren's always issuing bullshit from prison. But he issued that what people who were inside the FLDS community and out all thought was sort of different. It was termed to be a revelation from God, and there was a lot of crap in it, and all kinds of flowery religious language. But there were two headlines in this, as far as I'm concerned. He said, we're going to once again start performing celestial plural marriages, which is, when Warren got sent to prison, most people don't know this, he basically, obviously there's some relationships been going on, but he officially stopped unilaterally all celestial plural marriages in his community. They haven't been having those kind of marriages since 2006, 14 years. But just the past summer, Warren puts out this revelation saying, we're going to once again resume the performance of celestial plural marriages.
I understand plural marriage is what is celestial.
It's just like godly, like marriages.
It's just their fancy religious way of saying we're going to start doing plural marriages. We're going to start giving men.
It's just him trying to sound smart.
Yeah, and religious. But the bottom line is he didn't say underage marriages.
They never did.
But my contention, as soon as these guys start doing these plural marriages on an industrial level to sustain a community, the gravitational pull is always to go younger and younger.
Like, no one cares if you're marrying off, you know, like consenting adults. If you want to have 3 wives and 3 wives want to marry you, like, I mean, I don't know why, but
you look at the idiots on that sister wives.
Seeking sister wives.
You want to marry that moron and hang out with him, girls. That is your problem.
6 of you want to sleep with the same man. Be our guest.
Yeah, but you're adults.
When you're going underage and you're not giving them the freedom to choose, and you're taking little girls and you're marrying 12-year-olds to 65-year-old men, and you're impregnating them by 14 years old, that's where the line is. That's crime. That's a crime. That's not theology. That's just crime.
To me, that's worse than murder. I think that's worse than murder.
Okay, and I'm not gonna
to traumatize a child. I mean,
it's worse than murder.
Yeah. So anyhow, in this rambling story, Warren puts out this revelation and says we're back in the marrying business, and then he mentions one of his sons, which for us it seems to be again sort of establishing the bloodline. This kid's the heir named Helaman Jeffs. Law enforcement should know this throughout the country. Warren and his faithful are now going to start doing plural marriages again. When they start doing plural marriages, inevitably underage girls get caught up in it. I wanted the world to know that, because that's my read on it, being the cynical old bird dog that has watched this prick his whole life. But in that context, we get a phone call from our old friend Ruth Stubbs, who she herself had fled the community and led to one of the most pivotal lawsuits ever. She's one of my heroes. She calls me late one night and says, I got a friend whose daughter is now missing. They think she's been kidnapped by FLDS family members, has been brought back into they had her out, brought back into the FLDS community, and at her age they'll have her married. And now Warren's doing marriages again. So my red flag.
So where is she? Where's this girl?
Well,
we
did a 3-part YouTube series on our channel where we talk about the documentary and we give our reviews and kind of our opinions.
And what is that? How do people find it?
Story Hustler, Murder, Mayhem, PTSD. But you can just look up Story Hustler on YouTube. That's our channel.
We go through we break the story. I mean, it's the first we had. It was fun to basically break a story with my daughter, and I think it's one of the most significant stories I've done in a heck of a long time, because it's sort of, we thought we'd fought this battle. I gotten calls like that. Oh, we got a missing girl. Dylan said throughout her life, I was running up the mountain to respond to stories like this. This is not a first time, but we got Warren in prison. We got a federal judgment here in Phoenix that took the control of the town and the cops away from the FLDS.
Do you think it's kind of like sex trafficking?
Dude, when you're running girls across state lines and into Mexico, and if that ain't trafficking, I don't know what the hell is.
I mean, you're going to Nevada to get away from laws in Arizona, and then you're living in Utah. So and for a
long time they owned a hotel in this little dump called Caliente, Nevada, because the Nevada laws were a lot more lenient than Arizona laws. These guys were always just, and they're not going to stop doing this. With the lawsuit, most of the FLDS community, if you wanted to do a story on the FLDS community, you went to Hilldale, Utah, or Colorado City, that border town right there. But Warren ordered basically all of his followers out. So the problem for law enforcement and the problem for people who want to monitor this in any way, they're now scattered all over the United States. If you saw that one, we did a story on Channel 3 about this couple that had their 7 children taken away from them. They're the couple whose daughter was.
So this family, Maxine and Dan Jessup, basically they were devoted followers of Warren Jeffs their whole lives. Like had 7 children, raised them in the FIDS.
Warren married them. Warren put them together. Told you, you're marrying.
This is like a celestial marriage, but. Basically, Warren went to prison, and they interrogate you about your lives. Like, they know everything about you. And
he starts getting more insane and insaner, if I can say. And he started doing these purges. Any powerful men, he'd throw them out. And it was during one of these sort of psychotic moments when he was just purging people.
Oh, I was going to ask you about that. Did he mostly try to get rid of a lot of the men?
He got rid of young boys. Yeah, they
boys,
anybody who threatened his power, they were gone. Yeah.
But how would he make them go gone? How do they?
He owned the property. He could literally.
Because he in that town, he walked up to you. If one of his guys walked up to you and said, "You walk away from your house. You walk away from your family. You walk away from your spouses, and you leave now."
And don't talk to them. And they did it.
You'd be surprised how many people did that. And this is this is the thing. We sit here now, and it's hard for how do you get to that point? I would encourage that. Really, I think the most interesting story that we did was that second part for Channel 3, in that where we talk to this couple because they're this husband and wife are about 40 years old, and their life story represents the generational destruction that this son of a bitch Warren Jeffs has inflicted on his own people. And the irony to this story is his victims are not out. He's not killing people like Charlie Manson or doing something. His victims are his most faithful followers, and just messes with their lives. Put this couple together.
But that is almost like
how does he communicate with them out of prison? Because I thought that
sends out these written.
That's a good question.
Because I thought if they're able to prove that somebody's still perpetrating crimes from prison, they'll be able to transfer them to a remote location.
That has been a question.
That's a great question.
That's a great question.
Law enforcement
down in Texas. I should add.
Ship them off to Alaska or something.
Right? I think the cops should be probably answering that question.
With the big tough reputation of Texas, I don't understand because he's down in a Texas prison cell, and he seems to have more communication with the outside world than I do, being an old man sitting on my patio.
But his followers still go and visit.
Yeah,
his
wives go in and literally.
But Chet's point is such a good point. If he's basically from his prison cell encouraging crimes to continue, he needs to be.
We have no control over that. You should ask the Texas cops why they're letting that happen.
I've just heard them transferring big gang leaders that were causing gang violence in their city still from jail. They've moved them.
To
eliminate that stuff.
Send them to
Guantanamo Bay or something. No, that's
Alcatraz, right?
The same questions that I'd like our friends down in Texas to answer.
Texas cops, if you're listening.
Texas penal prison officials. What the hell? Dudes.
Come on, do your jobs.
David, do you have a question? I know you looked like you had a question with your mic.
We've been going on about this story for about half an hour.
Yeah, we can go on for about 30 days.
Yeah. And where are we at now in terms of the story that the Netflix documentary doesn't cover? And I'm sure you mentioned the YouTube channel, which is why I kind of.
If someone wants a crash course on this, watch the Netflix thing. Then pull up Channel 3, AZ Family, and
it's also linked on our YouTube videos.
And it's linked on there's this segment called The Next Generation. Dylan and I and a friend of ours named Adrian Campa, a great cameraman friend of ours, produced 2 stories for. And
I didn't do anything.
You were instrumental. But anyhow, the bottom line is, watch Keep Sweet, Bay on Netflix. Find our 2
YouTube
stories.
Channel. Go to our YouTube channel.
Our YouTube channel, Story Hustler, and we talk the 4 last episodes. We talk about Keep Sweet, Pray and Obey. That's the book that this is all based on. But and then find the 2 stories we did on azfamily.com about the next generation, because it talks about
Dan and Maxine.
It talks about Warren's revelation, and it talks about the disappearance of this 17-year-old girl in the context of this new revelation that they're going to do the marriages. And then we really profile the mother and father of this girl and their lives are the roadmap of what Warren has now done to a complete generation by tearing families apart and marrying girls and abandoning boys and casting people.
Wait, when these boys disappear, when they're ostracized like that, why don't they go and tell people what's going on? How is it still so swept under the rug? I don't
I think
understand.
Well, they're brainwashed, it sounds like. a lot.
For many years there was nowhere to go. They ended up in Vegas or Salt Lake or Phoenix, on the streets doing drugs, sometimes prostituted out. There was nothing. I did a documentary on this 20 years ago when we were first starting this battle, and I called it Colorado City and the Underground Railroad, because way back then there was nowhere for anybody to go. There was a couple of feisty activists here and a crazy reporter who wanted to do, and that was about it. There was nowhere, there was no government. There's a whole slew of charitable groups. Some I think are doing good work, some I think are a little suspect, but there's a whole bunch of people now trying to help out up in Colorado City, and that's a good thing.
How long has Warren Jeffs been in prison?
Since 2011
was it when he got brought? I think it was 2011 when he got. He got I think caught about 2006. He was tried in Utah in about 2008. I think he went down to Texas, and I think it was the summer of 2011. And he's been in the can for locked up or for better part of 15 years, and sentenced in prison for the better part of more than a decade now. And he got 100+ years. Oh,
yes.
They threw the
threw the book at him.
Yeah, and the jurors deliberated for the trial itself. He acted as his own attorney, which was the stupidest damn thing this guy could have done. But anyhow, yeah, it was.
He's the prophet.
It's a tendency of narcissist psychopaths.
Well, he's the
right?
prophet. God's gonna come down and protect him, right?
It was the way I say that OJ Simpson was the most historically significant trial I ever covered. Warren.
What was that like?
It felt like America's Rorschach test, and murder in black and white, and the racial elements and the celebrity elements, I was one of the first founders of Camp OJ. My sound man drove his pickup truck trailer. And then they built that whole infrastructure of media around, and we were one of the founding members of Camp OJ. But OJ was the most significant. Warren's was the weirdest.
What about Michael Jackson?
I would say that he didn't have a trial.
His civil trial.
But you were chasing him all over the world.
Yeah, but he never got tried. He got the civil charges and he won those. But he paid paid the first kid. He paid the first kid off $25 million. And so,
really?
Yeah. I think he did something wrong.
Well, but he'll argue that was, and his people will argue that was, it's worth the cost because just to have it go away, and maybe it was.
So do you think he was guilty?
See, people always ask me that. The one guy I know who
I really like Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
But
I
don't say you like his music.
His music. Sorry, his music.
Distinction.
Well, it seems like nowadays that you can't really like an artist without something coming out against them that they've done. So.
Well, no, but if he was hurting children, then.
Well, we know a personal friend that knew him and literally went to bat that he didn't do any of it.
We had an old friend of ours who's passed away, but he was, as a child, he was a friend of Michael's and spent a lot of time at the ranch, and he swears up and down that Michael didn't do it. I covered Michael long enough to know that there was a lot of smoke, where I sort of think there was fire. You don't have a grown man doesn't have that kind of relationship with young people. Yeah. But again, he's deceased. I don't care.
Dylan and Mike, to me, in chat, the most bizarre thing to me, what parent would drop their kids off to spend the night?
And Michael Jackson. I mean,
that's
but it's
creepy.
also like...
how a celebrity and wealth and fame.
It kind of ties into the Warren Jeffs things. You look at Dan and Maxine, you're like, how could you just drop your 7 kids off at someone's house just under the order of a prophet? Like, why would you let someone literally tell you, you can't see your kids anymore, go drop them off at this house and get out of town?
And they did.
Like what?
Yeah, why? Yeah.
You look at it and it's like, why do people do anything? Like it really is. Like you can ask these questions, but it's like people are stupid. Like no, I'm not calling them stupid, but it's like you're under the influence of these very powerful, you know, very famous people, not Warren Jeffs necessarily, but he was very powerful. He's your prophet. Like, this is what you've grown up knowing and
it's
being
the
told.
only thing you know.
And it's the
literally
only thing you know.
and
And
they
the
talk about
outside world is
isolation.
the
They
devil,
don't know.
and you're not going to be saved if you're part of the outside
Well, it's
world.
funny because my kids went to a private Catholic school, and I always told the kids, I said, if anybody tries to take you anywhere alone,
Oh, yeah.
a principal, a teacher, you say no.
Yeah.
You know, you go nowhere alone. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
But I mean, we grew up in the outside world, not under a religious prophet that
Well, you sent
controls
us-
your entire life.
You sent us
but-
to Catholic elementary school. That's where we were sitting ducks. But luckily, nothing
That
happened.
was your first
But,
mistake.
Yeah.
You
But
can
high
target
school,
on
we're
your
on
accident.
a target
Yeah.
age
Make
range.
you a co-conspirator.
Luckily, they didn't get picked off,
Well,
but
luckily I volunteered. I was always at the school, but
Hey, that's
you were there to
being in
supervise.
Woodward, we did the
I
same
was there
thing.
24/7.
So has getting recontacted about this story, has it kind of reopened your passion for reporting a little bit? And
I think you shut
Getting-
it down more.
No,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
no, it was really fascinating to go back up. We produced these stories, and we sort of avoided the punchline. The 17-year-old girl who was in fact abducted by FLDS
By her
members.
twin sisters.
Well, her twin sisters and others who are in the
Helped.
faith. At the end of the day, she's now back with her parents, so we got her back.
wow,
Good, okay.
that's awesome.
Good job.
It's,
Well, the
they
challenge starts here for them because
now they've got to undo the brainwashing.
undo all the brainwashing and
And they
everything
really,
that they were taught.
they
so.
only have until she's 18, which
She's
is next year. So
what,
yeah, and
17
it's,
and a
the
half?
worst part of it is still ahead for them. But you know, the girl was gone when we started doing this, and within about a week and a half, she was back with her family. And I think some of the publicity that we were able to generate.
But they did try to run with her. But
Oh,
they did
of
find
course
her.
yeah,
So-
That's so
yeah,
great.
and it was
Yeah.
a complete kidnapping.
So have you ever felt scared in your job? Have you ever felt scared of like the serial killers or?
Well, the serial killers, what he always tells me is, I mean, those are just like weak individuals because they prey on you. I mean, look at Richard Ramirez. He preyed on people at night when they were asleep in their beds, or they came up behind you and you were vulnerable. Like, they're not coming up to you in the middle of the daylight and trying to get chesty with you because. I mean, they're just these weak individuals who need to prey on vulnerable people when they're asleep in their beds because they that's
Yeah.
all the power they have.
Yes, people have often asked me, are you scared when you're facing a guy like Ramirez or a guy named Joseph Paul Franklin, who was a famous racist serial killer, went around shooting black people. And I've interviewed a number of killers, and I tell you, honestly, sitting next to a guy like Ramirez is, because they're not the kind of guys that are going to scare you on the street. They slip through windows and shoot you while you're sleeping, or jump on women out of bushes and stuff.
Yeah.
They're not these are not macho crimes. They're a bunch of cowardly little shits. And my interview with Ramirez was notable because I was so pissed off at him that it was like we both wanted to jump across the table and block him. I wanted to kick his ass because he's a punk, and he started reading me this manifesto. So
Need a
those
script.
yeah, these guys are not. I didn't find any of the serial killers very scary, and these FLDS knuckleheads, whatever. I don't know for whatever reason. None of those.
Didn't you want to hurt Warren Jeffs?
Did I? No,
Everyone you do
I
this for the
did.
children?
But OJ is the scariest one then, because he can move a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh,
but-
gee,
Juice
the most
was-
intimidating.
Yeah.
He's a football player, but
Even I remember.
Even him.
I remember him walking out of LAPD headquarters just hours after before any of the dream team was assembled. OJ was scared shitless walking out of it, and it was like it was funny how utterly pathetic and beaten he looked. The big running. He was not like hunched over, just scared as a little kid.
I mean, his face on that
Yeah,
the
magazine
photo-
picture, he's like,
Yeah, he's,
He looks guilty.
He-
He does not look
He
an
looks
innocent man.
guilty.
Yeah.
yeah.
So were you ever scared for your dad, Dylan? I mean, your dad. Your dad's running around chasing serial killers and
I don't know about
scary
others.
people out there.
I
Did you
don't.
ever, were you worried? or
No, I
scared?
mean, one thing he told me, like, when his last summer reporting here, there was a shooting in downtown, and it was a homeless man who got shot, and my friend and I was like, oh, it's one of the last stories he's going to cover. I want to go down and see him do it. Like, I want to be there during his live shot. And so I took my friend down, and she was freaking out. She was like, I don't want to go to a crime scene. Like, there was just someone killed there. I go, this is the safest place in the entire city. And this is what he's told me. Like, the post-crime scene is the safest place
There's
you can
more
be
cops
There
there
are
than
more
you
cops there. Like, my school, like, there was a school shooting threat, they thought, you know, like, and I was like, I don't want to go to school, and my mom was like, you know how many cops are going to be lined up at your school already? It's probably the safest place in this valley.
Safest place in the valley.
So it's like, I don't think I was ever scared because he was running there, like, after the scenes. I mean, if he was going, like, when he covered Katrina and all that, you're going into the, you know, the heart of this, and it's still unfolding. But no, I don't think I was ever scared, necessarily. I think he's more scared for me going into the world because of what he did, but...
A little PTSD for my kids.
Little bit.
Are you inspired at all to follow in his footsteps with journalism?
Well, I get that question a lot, actually. I did double major in business and communications, and I interned for a magazine, kind of thinking I wanted to do the journalism route, and I wrote for my school paper.
Wow.
So I kind of have followed a little bit, but I think I like the public relations side a little bit more of writing, like having more of a bias. But I mean, yeah, I've always loved his career. It's definitely been something that's inspired me and something I'm definitely interested in pursuing one day. But I don't know, I like him. I like the fact that there's a new story every day to kind of unfold and, you know, go after. And, like, he is a hero, and he doesn't like to think so, but he is, and he did a lot of good for this people, so.
Well, the world needs more fearless journalists, for sure.
Heroes. Mike
agree.
Watkiss, saving the children every day.
Uncovering the monsters, too.
There you go. So we hear you're going off to play basketball. I don't want to reveal where in case one of these scary guys is listening. But
Yeah, overseas to play ball, and Dad couldn't be more excited. Another season of hoops.
Keeping the dreams alive.
that's so exciting.
One more year, and then we'll hang up the shoes.
No, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. But I'm definitely very excited. Gonna go get my master's and then see where life takes me.
So that'll be 4 years.
No, it's actually just a year-long program,
Okay.
which is
Oh.
exciting.
It's
So
just a year.
Playing
just a
ball
year.
and
studying hard.
So 1 year, that's exciting.
Oh,
Exactly. Doable, exciting. I don't need to be in school for another 4 years. It's amazing.
Is Dad invited?
I don't know.
You better ask me that.
On the spot.
She's definitely out.
Yeah, he'll come visit once,
Okay,
hopefully.
sure.
Yeah, gotta let him watch at least one game.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Very excited for her.
No,
Maybe-
you're always welcome.
Maybe the Green Room will come visit.
Yes.
Oh.
Little,
Hook up a Zoom for one of the games.
right? Yeah, no, definitely.
So what's on your bucket list then?
My bucket list, oh God, I don't know. I feel like I've lived a good life thus far. I'm just grateful to be alive today. Keep going, you know. Hope tomorrow comes along too. Taking it day by day.
Well, I have something. I'm challenging you right now on the air. We need you to go investigate that whole Epstein.
That's a
Yes, you know what? That's somebody needs to. It's a long
You
way
never
away.
hear about it anymore.
Yeah, wherever. I mean, there's.
Isn't it in New York?
Yeah, it's just
Or
it's sort of
Connecticut
out
or
of my
something?
jurisdiction. There's polygamous groups that I wish I would have been closer. There's one up in northern Utah that I'd love to have got my hands on, but they were just sort of out of my reach, physically,
Oh, right.
logistically.
Because you have your
to
wife
get-
and kids.
That was one question.
well, and I just have to. You have to chase
It's kind of an ordeal.
You're
trying to
chasing
get
a
up there.
mirage on because they're hiding from you, and I don't know what the circumstances is. This Epstein thing is like at an echelon, but you know I know the polygamous cult leaders of the American Southwest, and I've covered many of them. But something like that's just sort of I don't even know how to get your hands.
So you're
around.
smart. Let's do the closer.
Well,
ones
you know
here.
what? Fix what you can fix.
Right.
Yeah.
I took on the
Yes.
fights that I could fight, and yet you can go flail around, and that's too deep, and I'm too old to get started on.
Have you ever had to hit someone or jump a fence? Or
Yes,
I
but not
don't-
because of his work.
Yeah, well, no, come on now, that's fine. Yeah, but no, I'm a peace lover. I'm a peace loving man.
Oh.
And what is on your bucket list?
You know what? I'm trying to make some movies. Still doing a little acting and follow my kids, spend as much time with my children. Our son's
Understand.
in law school in the Bay Area, and
It seems like there's a new documentary on each story that you covered. Like,
you know
next, there's going to be an OJ documentary.
Yeah, well,
There you go.
It's interesting.
Oh, not that there's
these
not already
stories
some.
recycle themselves. It's sort of the public mind. Every so much, OJ has come up. Ramirez and serial killers have gone, and I've done so many serial killers that I find
Ted
myself in this.
Bundy.
Ted
You-
Bundy.
You know,
No
what is the
way.
fascination with all these serial killer docs?
Well, I
it's
think
so
the
bizarre.
fascination
People love
is
to
people
consume
are
it.
like, well, I'm a normal individual. What made this human tick and go off the rails and kill everyone? Like,
Yeah,
you
I
know,
don't know.
I
I
mean, you
don't-
look in the mirror and you're like, wow, a person can do that. And you're like,
Yeah.
how do they get to that level?
every time you watch one, it just you see that they're a broken person. They're not
Yeah.
really
Oh,
yeah.
and that's one thing the Richard doc didn't touch on a lot. I thought it was a great doc.
It followed the cops.
It followed the cops, and that's an
story of-
incredible story.
But they didn't do much.
They
on
didn't talk
Richard.
about his background. They
Yeah.
kind of hinted at his childhood, and his childhood was messed up. And that's
So
not an
is that a
excuse at
common
all.
denominator? Are they all messed up? when they were
I
kids?
don't. You know, I think that.
I don't know.
I think that you're going to find it. Yeah, I think there's a common denominator in many of these broken people. Obviously, a lot of broken people do
A
not
lot of
become
mental
serial
illness.
killers. But Richard's was horrific background. You know, Dahmer's.
He watched
was,
his uncle kill his aunt.
Yeah, and
And his uncle boasted about
his
being a
uncle-
serial killer in the war overseas. Like,
yeah,
it's,
so this was
it's not like he
the
had a great-
milieu that Richard grew up in.
Yeah.
We have 1 minute left.
Okay, well, this has been very fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
yes.
Lively and all over the map.
Go watch the Story Hustler podcast
Yes,
on YouTube.
Story
They have
Hustler.
every-
Bye,
Sweet.